There has been a lot of conversations about friction and quality of life when it comes to Dragon's Dogma 2 and games in general. Friction in this case refers to game mechanics and design features that doesn't make for the most pleasant or streamlined gaming experience, either by causing confusion, frustration, or just wasting time. Usually, quality of life is important in games for making a satisfying experience, but sometimes this friction can be a good thing, and Dragon's Dogma 2 is a perfect example of that. Dragon's Dogma 2 has a lot of bold and quite genius design choices that don't really make sense on the surface, but when you actually play the game, those choices is what gives the game its unique sense of wonder and immersion. But let's take a closer look at what makes Dragon's Dogma 2 so special. The story of Dragon's Dogma 2 is pretty straightforward for the most part. You are the literal chosen one, or the arisen as the game calls it, the rightful heir to the throne, but some fraud has taken your place and it is your job to take it back while chasing a dragon that stole your heart. Literally. The premise of the story is very intriguing, but for the most part the actual storytelling and progression was really weak, to the point that I just didn't really care for it and was more intrigued by side stories and activities. But then the story does something really spectacular and suddenly I'm actually invested in the story and caring for the characters. I've never experienced something like that, where my whole opinion on a game story can switch in an instant, and it made my journey retroactively way more enjoyable, and past missions had now so much more weight to them. Other interesting thing about the story and the world and how it connects to the gameplay is the pawn feature. Pawns in this universe are human or beast-like entities that are created by and only follow the commands of the arisen. But here is the cool meta feature. Each player can create their own main pawn, but your party can fit 2 other pawns, so you can hire pawns from other players to fill out your party. And it never feels like a gimmick because it fits into the story in a weird way. The mission design in Dragon's Dogma 2 is an intriguing conundrum as well. Some of the quests in the game are simple, go here and kill the enemies or find the item, but for each of those the game balances it with more convoluted and sometimes obscure missions. A lot of the time the game gives you only vague descriptions of what you're supposed to do, and this did cause some frustration few times, but it also encourages exploration and experimentation. Finding a quest objective naturally just by stumbling on it semi-accidentally does spark that lovely satisfaction that a normal quest marker just cannot deliver. I'll take a bit of frustration or confusion if it leads to that feeling. The pawns can also help you discover quest objectives. If a pawn that you have hired has completed the quest with another player, they can guide you to the right place.
I happened upon a treasure chest rather close by here. Perhaps I could show you the way?
Other scenario where pawns can come in clutch is interacting with the elves. The elves in this world speak a totally different language which your character does not understand. Even when interacting with elven shopkeepers, the menus are in this foreign language and you just have to remember which option is which. But if you have a pawn in your party that does understand Elvish, then the dialogue is translated to you. The pawn system is really clever and some of the best online functionality in a single player game I've ever come across. Some of the quests also implement gameplay mechanics that are never explained to you by a tutorial, so you just have to figure out them yourself. For example, there was this one quest where 2 different people were looking for the specific item. First of all, I accidentally stumbled on the item naturally and apparently skipped a long section in the quest by doing so, which I thought was funny. After that, I discovered a way you can create counterfeits of any items you have, including quest items. So I did that and gave the forgery to one of the people and the real one to the other and managed to get both of their rewards. That felt so amazing. It probably would have still been pretty cool if the counterfeit mechanic was explained to you in a tutorial, but just figuring it out myself adds so much to the moment. And the game is full of these moments where you can find weird ways to complete quests. Adding to the questing and exploration is the game's approach to traversal and fast travel. The game has a finite amount of fast traveling you can do. First, you have to either discover or place an item called port crystal in a location where you want, and to travel back to that crystal, you need to use fairy stones that you can buy or find in the world. I know a lot of people find limited fast travel systems a bit of a bother, but I think it works very well. It discourages the behavior where you just fast travel back and forward to complete quests and makes you interact with the world more. I like how you need to plan your adventures beforehand. You can also use ox carts to travel between bigger towns, but these trips can be interrupted by monster attacks. There are also a few of these rope carts that you can use to traverse some areas, and I think these are the perfect example of Dragon's Dogma's fun friction. In any other game, the platform would either automatically be where you board it, or at least appearing in couple seconds after interacting with the crank, but not in this game. If the cart is not on your side of the track, you have to spin the crank for a couple minutes for the cart to arrive to your location. Then you gotta make sure your whole party is inside the cart before you start spinning the crank again, because if your pawn is not inside the cart, they will be left behind. This should not be that fun, but it just is. Seeing and feeling that cart move in the environment just adds that satisfying tactile physicality to the world. That physicality shows up in combat as well. The feeling when you are just calmly going through a forest and suddenly a cyclops bursts through the trees, laying waste to anything on its path. The smaller enemies in the game got a bit boring after a while, but seeing these big creatures never got old. What makes these battles against Cyclops, ogres, chimeras, etc. so thrilling compared to the smaller enemies is the ability to climb them. It feels incredible every time you manage to climb to a creature's head, get a few critical hits in, while your party is blasting the enemy from the ground. I played most of the game as a thief, which is probably the best class for climbing enemies, as you can use your abilities like planting an explosive on the creature's head, jump off and explode it in mid-air, then bringing down the enemy with your rope pull. This game had some of the greatest combat moments I've ever experienced in a video game, and it's all thanks to the game's bold design choices that allows for a lot of player freedom. My only regret is that I didn't touch most of the other classes during my playthrough, but at least there is something new left for the eventual replay. As special as Dragon's Dogma 2 was, it would be disingenuous not to mention few of the aspects that I did not enjoy. I played the game on PC and the frame rate and pace fluctuation was insufferable at points. While going through the wilderness, the game ran pretty decently, getting like 70 to 80 FPS, but instantly when you walk into a town, the performance plummets to the 40s. It is really bad, and early on I was really close to just quitting the game because of it, but I powered through. Earlier I praised the game's boldness when it comes to the exploration and traversal, but there is one aspect of it that I absolutely hate, and that is stamina depletion outside of combat. I feel like it adds nothing but frustration when you're just traversing towards an objective and you constantly have to stop running because you run out of stamina. The other thing is inventory management and weight. In theory, I really liked how the game handles item weight, that you actually get slower movement speed as you carry more and more items, but there was a point where I felt I had to do inventory management every other minute just because I wanted to carry few more crafting ingredients. Luckily I was able to manage the issue of stamina and inventory weight with couple mods, so I was able to focus on enjoying the stuff the game handles well. All in all, Dragon's Dogma 2 was a really special experience. It's hard to compare it to anything else as it carves a very unique identity to itself with bold and creative design. It isn't scared of frustrating the player, and I can understand how that might filter some people, but when you look past it and what that friction actually creates is nothing less than magical. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found the review interesting. Let me know your thoughts on Dragon's Dogma 2 in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more. Thank you and have a great day.